Love podcasts, hate nonsense. The PoliticsJOE podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
Woo!
PMQs. PMQs.
PMQs. PMQs.
Do you remember
Whatever would go.
the phone jacker? The phone jacker bit where he would call up electronic shops and he'd be like, "Do you sell look at a tov? I want a dovda." PMQs.
Not familiar.
You're not familiar?
I like the one where he rang the estate agent. He was really upset, the estate agent.
You know phone jacker.
I know. I don't think I've ever watched it.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Brian Badondi?
No.
Terry Tibbs, talk to me, seduce me? Fucking hell. All right.
Blind spot for me.
Channel 4 really had a huge moment, didn't it?
It did. It did.
Do you remember when they brought back Big Breakfast and it was just not the same? It was awful.
Oh, with like aged Chris Evans.
No,
What's he doing now?
Huh?
Chris Evans.
Virgin.
Right.
No,
I'm sure
as in
he's
he's on the
sex.
radio. He's not like,
Very nice.
yeah.
Sorry, I said what's he doing now, not who's he doing now.
Presenting radio. It's a much more subdued atmosphere post we rolled on the cameras than what we were getting up to.
Yeah, speaking
Pre.
of virgins, should we roll the first clip?
Do you want to do you want to go straight to PMQs or do you want to reference Kanye West first?
Go on, should we do Kanye? Yay.
I think they'll be annoyed.
Will they?
Well, from an
Oh, yeah,
audience
because we've really worried about them before, haven't we?
so-
Oh, there'll be some audience feedback.
No, but like you click
There's
on the-
feedback
you
no
click
matter
on
what
this-
we
you
do.
click on this
Oh, I
video.
didn't like this. Oh, I hate the guests. Oh, the sound's not very good. Oh, our takes are so terrible.
Get a
What's
life.
something else?
Well, the headline's probably going to be like PMQs react to Starmer bodying Kemi Badenoch or something, and then from an audience thing, if we start talking about Kanye, then they might tail off.
Well, we could do 2 cuts today. We could do...
That didn't work last time.
It's happening again. This happened on Monday and Ollie tried to make me go home 4 times. I just had a bit something in my throat.
Shall we? Well, let's have a clip, and then you can clear your throat in the downtime, and then we'll come back to it. Yeah.
Yep.
Roll the clip.
The Prime Minister was on top of his brief. Perhaps you'd be able to answer some questions.
Coughing.
Given this crazy decision,
I think it's just because
given this crazy decision and so many others, new legislation is needed to clarify the right to a family life in Article 8. I'm not talking about what he just said. I know Labour MPs don't understand much of what they're saying, but the Prime Minister literally wrote a book on the European Convention on Human Rights. This is a situation where we need to put our national interests before the ECHR. Does he agree that we should legislate even if lawyers warn that this might be incompatible with human rights law?
She complains about scripted answers and questions. Her script doesn't allow her to listen to the answer.
Prime Minister.
She asked me if we're going to change the law and close the loophole in question 1. I said yes. She asked me again in question 2, and I said yes. She asked me again in question 3. It's still yes.
Was that an all-time worst ever PMQs performance by Kemi Badenoch?
It absolutely stunk.
Yeah. Should we talk about... Should we first explain what she was talking about?
Yeah, go on then. Go on, yeah.
Her line of questioning was about a family who used the Ukrainian family support scheme that had been set up by the Conservatives. A judge ruled that a family from Gaza was also eligible for that scheme. And Kemi Badenoch is very upset about that. And her line is at best inconsistent. At worst, you can make up your minds. But her argument is that the Ukrainians absolutely fine to come and seek refuge here, but the Gazans categorically no. And she backs this up by saying there are a lot of people around the world who are in really terrible conditions.
Presumably the Gazans aren't white.
Look, I would never presume to think that our immigration policy would be based off of something like that.
I do want to talk about how bad she was on the whole, but on the substance, I said to you just after she said it in the office, I was quite mad that she's been like, and rightfully, hundreds of thousands of people from Ukraine have come here to seek refuge, but 6 people from Gaza have also got in.
Yeah.
What, 6 people from Gaza? Do you mean a Hamas cell? Why is there not more alarm about this, Prime Minister?
Well, yeah, look, exactly, and it's kind of the twin moralities that are at play. I just thought they were so neatly enmeshed together in her asking about this. I thought, anyway.
It's also what was interesting. It's one family has done this, and then I suppose theoretically others would be allowed to do that. But is allowing people to flee war-torn Gaza bad? Like, it is just making such a big issue about one failure.
Mad. But yeah.
If you view it as a failure.
So
it was also, I mean, he did her on that as well, because we'll come back to the next era later, but she lays all of this out. She's like, well, why did you allow that, Prime Minister? And he's like, actually, you lot allowed that? That was you guys. Like,
shocking.
Then she asked, do you oppose it? And he went, yep. Fuck! Shit! didn't think about that.
He says, yeah. Then she's like, I'm going to ask you again.
Why? This is like is this the most important thing she does with her week? But like, so why is she so bad at it?
Well, as he pointed out during this Prime Minister's questions, she declined a briefing that was offered to her on Chagos, because the Conservatives are very upset about the Chagos Islands, and it's a national security issue, but Privy Council are allowed to attend these meetings. And she was also upset that she hadn't been invited to any briefings on the Southport killer. She was invited to one. She didn't turn up for that either. So what we were discussing in the office, weren't we, Ed, was Kemi Badenoch's day. What does it look like?
You know that? Was it Princess Margaret had the extremely leisurely thing? Like, read the papers in the bath.
Yeah, with a gin and tonic.
First drink. Lunch with mother. She must have, like, what does she do?
I think, by the looks of things, she wakes up, she goes on Twitter.
Yeah, okay. There's 2 things I want to say about that. One, when all the briefings came out about her being lazy, I sort of went, I'm not sure about that. Cabinet Minister, Leader of the Opposition, it's quite possible that like some pretty racist people in CCHQ and elsewhere are like, there's a black woman here and she doesn't work very hard. I thought that's probably a sort of a stereotype. Having seen her perform at PMQs for several months now, I'm coming around to the conclusion that they were just being honest about her. Second, looking at Twitter, she is fighting ghosts. She's fighting like an apparition of Keir Starmer that is not the man that is stood in front of her. She's been like, well, he will actually stand right by the Hamas cell from Gaza that has made its way into Britain. And when he goes, no, it's wrong, actually, we need to do something about it.
Fuck. She's also so bad at her delivery. There was a point where she had to clarify what she was talking about today. She actually had to say, she started her point, and the Labour MPs reacted in a way that suggested she was being inconsistent about the previous topic. And she went, no, I've moved on! That should be clear.
It was quite breaking the fourth wall. It was quite Brecht, actually. I thought it was...
Beautiful.
Do you imagine she's doing like art on a level that we can't understand? We're going, she's an idiot. She's dumb. She's like, no. So you Philistines, you don't understand the high culture that's being played out before your very eyes.
It's like when she calls him a socialist every other week. And you go...
Frothing at the mouth.
But to your point about her, an apparition of Starmer. It's like... It's almost like when the media tried to make out that Keir Starmer had skirted COVID laws, all right? And look, you can criticise the Prime Minister all you want, but this is the man who took a cab, who didn't take his chauffeur from Parliament all the way up to Kilburn. He walked it because he thought he might have COVID. This man is such a stickler for the rules. It's like when loads of people on social media love to go, voice coach, that must have been an affair. It's like, you guys you want him to be something he is not. He's just not this guy.
We have this total scumbag, immoral shagger.
Yeah.
In office.
You seen Love Actually?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he is a boss. He's a boss, and I think this is what he will fall foul of come the next general election. Is he will lose out to the fuck the bosses vote. It is the call in sick, the anti-authoritarian. He cannot help but position himself as like the deputy headmaster, right? Who's come in to give everyone a stern talking to.
He's a civil servant.
Yeah, a lawyer.
That's who he is.
Yeah, someone who loves the rule. Like, there's no way around it. He is not cool. This doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. You can make being like a bit of a nerd. You can make that into your image and do quite well out of it. But it's when he talks about football, when he talks about anything other than a procedure or a set of rules and whether or not something fits into them or not, he can't do it. And I think that is what he will fall foul of when it comes up, particularly against Reform, who counterintuitively, and I say counterintuitively as in like running counter to facts, they will capitalise on the fuck the bosses vote.
Graham Greene's the end of the affair, right? Not the affair, but the husband, who's a civil servant. That is who Keir Starmer is. He goes to work, he cares about the job. The job is paramount. That is who he is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's, the sort of, they could really make something out of him presiding over a bloated civil service, which is what they've tried to talk about before, right? About how you can't get anything through Whitehall. They could make an argument that he's part of the problem and he loves procedure and he goes too slow. But instead they call him a radical socialist. I saw someone doing an investigation, in air quotes, on Twitter the other day with someone called the Fabian Society, the socialist left-wing think tank that's influencing Labour policy. And what I found really profound about that statement was it was clearly someone who doesn't know anything.
About what the Fabians are.
The right are really, really struggling to understand the left. They just cannot understand it or grasp it.
Do you think this is interesting? Because I think in terms of sort of cultural battles, attention-based battles, I think the right is sort of in the ascendancy right now, primarily because of what's happening in America and Musk, Trump, and their sort of adjacent outriders dominating online conversations about politics. But the politics that's happening there, in that chamber, from the traditional right wing of British politics, it does not feel like they are in the ascendancy, right? Like it feels like right wing. There's this alternate power center in right wing politics right now. You can call it the new right, you can call it the hard right. We can argue about the terminology. That they are actually kind of untethered and unmoored from, and they find themselves adrift within their own political constituency, within their own base, and actually Reform much more closely understand how to channel that energy and channel that power.
I wonder if it's too fractured, that new right, in that you have, of the new right, of the far right, you have kind of two big beasts and figures. Nigel Farage and Tommy Robinson, one of whom wants nothing to do with the other. So that turns all the Tommy people against Farage and the Reform project. And I think Reform do still have to do a job in convincing the traditional Tory right that they are palatable, that they can overcome all the baggage that Farage has had over his political career. So I wonder if it's still too fractured to become a cohesive movement. And also, you don't really see any of that within the Tory parliamentary party. The only person I think prominent who properly leans into it is Jenrick. So maybe until Jenrick, if Jenrick becomes leader after Badenoch, because I'm not convinced Badenoch will last till the next election.
I don't think she will either.
I suppose you've got a
we'll
party of centrists who are being led by someone who's attempting to be Reform adjacent, right? Because the only people who really are like in the matrix of that, you are like Alex Burkhart, but not really. He could quite comfortably go back to being a centrist. Chris Philp, he's having a go. Robert Jenrick actually is a bit of an ideologue, and Kemi Badenoch is.
Mel Stride?
I don't think that. I think he's a bit fair weather. I think that he's quite malleable.
Yeah.
But on your point that that they can't seem to make anything land, and it's because they keep sort of lobbing a football at Labour, and then it's as if the football just comes and smacks them back in the face again. They can't. Every attack line that they go down, it's a dead end, and they're spending so much time worrying about what the body politic is saying about certain issues. They're running those ideas out constantly, and so they're constantly chasing their tail rather than actually formulating a proper strategy of how to bring themselves back into power.
It's the complete anti-lesson of Cummings, right? Which is they are obsessed. It's the old school Tory party of the chattering classes, what's being written in the Spectator, what's being written in the Telegraph, who's on Newsnight, and the arguments that they're making and taking, rather than what is happening in the country. Which is why I can't remember who it was. Backbench MP stood up and did a question about the Chagos Islands, and everyone around him is kind of like nodding sagely and jeering and cheering him up. And it's like I don't think you appreciate the salience of this issue and how important it is for you here and how unimportant it is for other people. I think Badenoch makes a similar mistake. And also on this point about PrEP and whether or not she's actually any good at what she's doing, there was another one, wasn't there? There was another simple fact check thing. She's talking about that guy working from home.
In Finland.
Yeah.
Head of border control that Labour are about to implement. And Starmer calmly pointed out that actually he had been working from home in Finland since 2019 under the Conservatives, and under Labour they've brought him back into the UK workplace. But it's such a simple fact check. If you were writing that, if you were writing that in a newspaper, you should have probably done a quick right to reply with him, being like, hey mate, just checking, you working from home or are you going to work here? If you are the leader of the opposition, that... You should probably find that out.
He's raging. He's unpacking his boxes.
This poor bloke sat looking out over a fjord or something. It's pretty quite dark at the moment, but maybe the Northern Lights. Maybe you can see the Northern Lights.
It's dark all the time out there at the moment, isn't it?
He's but nonetheless he's very happy. He's probably eating some kind of bizarrely
getting
cured
his alcohol stamps ready.
Fish. He's having a nice time, and then he flicks on PMQs to see them talking about him. And sort of lets out a howl of despair and rage at the prospect that he's going to have to relocate back to Croydon.
Yep.
Curse you, Kemi. Why did you bring it up?
We had a good thing going.
We had a good thing going here.
The way that she framed it as well was as if he would actually be patrolling the border.
How will he do that from Finland, Sir Keir?
He's in Finland with the Hubble telescope. There's only one man that patrols. This is why net migration is so high, because basically there's one guy who walks the circumference of the United Kingdom. It takes him a year.
That's all. And because of civil service regulations, there's a set amount he can do per day walking safely. So it's like 100 meters
and then he has
at
to
a
turn
time,
back,
and he can't go any further.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you go it's like the Maginot Line.
No,
go slightly further.
He's working from home. So
sorry, of
do you know
course.
those little boxes that you get in Milton Keynes, the little robots that deliver your food?
Yes. Yeah.
That's what he has. It's got a camera on it. So it's going around. So he's controlling it from Finland, right, as it goes around the border. But every now and again, it'll hit a pavement or something like that, and it tips over. He has to wait for someone to come and pick it back up again.
What actually happens is the migrants come, sneak up behind it and turn it over. Because it's not got 360 cameras.
Do you know when you pick them back up and put it on track, they say thank you?
Oh,
do they?
They do.
Hate robots.
When you pick this one up and put it back on track, it shouts like, growth is essential.
Let me see your passport.
Smash the gangs.
Let me see your passport.
But on the plus side, we will be able to see videos now, won't we, of the deportations? There's a media campaign coming, isn't there? We'll be able to see videos.
Why are you asking me?
Will we?
Yeah,
I haven't seen this.
They made a big song and dance about it. You guys not seen that? They're going to start. Right. Okay.
I was off on Monday. So if it was a Monday.
Well, there's basically, as a result of sort of a feeling that the public aren't necessarily fully aware of what a good job the Labour Party is doing on sending foreign criminals back to their countries. They're going to start an information campaign showing people being deported. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I thought they had a fantastic line today, actually, which was, so basically they'd spent a long time lambasting the Conservatives for, if you come here on a small boat, the Conservatives didn't want you to be able to gain the right to remain, right? They say you're not a real asylum seeker. By the way, we're not going to give you any other way of applying for asylum. The only route by which you can apply for asylum, we're also going to shut that one off. Labour were like, guys, we are hammering them over again. This is outrageous. It breaks into international law. And they brought it in yesterday. They were like, you know what? Actually, we're going to do that anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not great, is it?
That would have been a good line from Badenoch.
Good job.
Do you remember when, I think it was Sunak got into a rut of just pointing out like everything that Labour was press releasing was all like originally a Conservative idea. And that was his like line of attack. He'd be like, oh, bringing down inflation, that was a Conservative idea.
Do you think, we're talking about the Tories still wanting to get into the Spectator and the Telegraph, and people talked about in the US presidential election and the rise of the Trump right, how it went hand in hand with like the podcast sphere. I'm not sure that the podcast sphere in the UK has that same, is as fertile a ground, is as fallow ground for movements like Reform and the New Right. I'm not sure like that the biggest podcasts in the UK necessarily align that closely with those goals, perhaps.
Calgie said something interesting last night. Christian Calgie.
Yeah.
from the
Friend of the
Express.
pod, yeah.
He said long form interviews with politicians only work when the host is favourable to the guest. And he said that's why the trigonometry with Kemi Badenoch worked. Because you're already tuning in going, I like the cut of this host's jib. So therefore I will give this politician an hour of my time. I thought that was an interesting food for thought point.
Interesting.
I wasn't sure I entirely agreed. I think that I really like long form medium. But I suppose if you want to take it to the masses in the way that Joe Rogan does, that's what he backed it up with. He said, you look at Joe Rogan's podcast and actually like they're on common ground most of the time.
Yeah. I think we could do an entire podcast about Rogan, to be honest with you. But in the beginning, the reason he had mass appeal was because he was actually like relatively intellectually curious and open-minded, and would speak to people that he disagreed with, would have debates with people that he disagreed with, whether that was about like cannabis decriminalisation or whether or not there was a pre-existing ancient civilization that no one's discovered yet. And he would debate people about those things. But he's kind of, I think, there's been a bit of audience capture, and he's now sort of become quite reactionary, radicalised by COVID a bit, I think. But
Everyone's rather reactionary now, aren't they?
I guess so, yeah. But the thing for me, your point is right, yeah. Okay, so how is how many times can he go on Table Manners or Off Menu, right? Before the British podcasting landscape has been exhausted.
As if that would have anywhere near the impact.
No, but this is my point, right? Because
Going on Table Manners is totally insane, by the way, for any Labour minister to do.
he's done it. Starmer's done it.
I know, but it's insane.
We did it. I think there are a couple of like actual big British YouTube /podcast in the politics space, right? Trigonometry, Alex O'Connor, us. There are publishers in the space,
Yeah.
right? But that is not the point. The point is for Trump and MAGA in the States, there was this ecosystem of cultural /lifestyle podcasts that tangentially talk about politics. Sometimes talk about politics. Might be fleeting. Rogan has like takes issue with like a trans person competing in a sport, or we'll start talking about the benefits for the tax receipts of a state that's legalized cannabis or whatever. But it's not an explicitly political show. He also will talk for 3 hours about comedy. He will talk for 3 hours about MMA. It's more of a lifestyle thing, right? That you listen to and you identify with because you have an interest in combat sports, in history and biomedical sciences.
You like hanging out with the host.
Yes, exactly. And then you occasionally do an episode where Trump comes on, where Vance comes on, where Bernie Sanders comes on, and so you talk to politics about them. Theo Von is probably the most extreme example of this. That ecosystem does not exist here. What she could do is try and go on those actual shows, and it would have the same impact because their audiences transcend national boundaries. You would catch plenty of British strays by going on them. The problem for her is that I think Rogan or Theo Von or any of those shows have far more interest in like having Nigel Farage on than they do in having Kemi Badenoch
The thought
on.
of Kemi Badenoch and Theo Von having a conversation
But I
is hysterical.
would have said that about Trump before he did it.
But you kind of get like...
What about that schooner scorer guy?
But it's Badenoch's problem. Like, she's actually just not that interesting. Like, there's nothing. What benefit? Like, the interview Trigonometry did with Kemi Badenoch has less views than their typical episodes because people aren't that interested in her.
I guess this is the thing, which we know as digital publishers, is that there are characters, people, thinkers, speakers who have ginormous audiences that follow them around the internet, and a huge number of our elected officials do not have a similar audience, right?
No.
We often talk about like whether or not, if we got a big Keir interview, whether or not it would actually get any traction on the platform or not. And I'm inclined to say that I don't think it would, because I don't think there's actually that much interest in an hour-long conversation with Keir Starmer about his personal politics. I think people are more interested in, take your pick, any of the big, whether it's his lot, whether it's Zizek, like Mariana Mazzucato.
I don't know. I think Miliband has a lot of appeal like that.
Yeah, but I would say I think he's rare.
But I think that it's someone like... Okay, so the problem with Badenoch, I think, is that why she's very different to someone like Farage, why you would listen to a Farage sit down for an hour, is because Badenoch doesn't have any like guiding principles. She doesn't have like a theology that she's like been tied to her entire political career. She's quite like government of the day person. She moves. And even when she was talking on trigonometry, by the way, I actually thought was really interesting. I really thought it was. But she doesn't, throughout that, you can identify someone like Farage. There is like a rock in everything he says. There's like a guiding light that he doesn't waver from. Whereas with her, she's like, well, on migration under the last government, we did this. And actually, I would rather do this, but it's difficult for that. She's so wishy-washy that it's not interesting for an hour. You want her for like quick sound bites. This is what government policy we'd like to see. But you don't want her as like a guiding theologian or whatever.
I guess you're right, is that everyone in that room is conditioned into a mode of communication that does not lend itself to an hour-long discussion of ideas or philosophies, right? If you watch a full pool interview, you notice that they will quite often repeat the same answer 3 or 4 times to all of the questions, thereby guaranteeing that is what gets clipped up and run on social media. They've hit the focus group, they've hit the party line, and they're trying to get some retweets out of it, right? Rather than engaging with the substance of what they're asking or playing for time if it's a broadcast interview. And actually, when quite often, I think Nick Robinson's Political Thinking is a pretty good example of this. When any of those people sit down with him for an hour, after about half an hour or 45 minutes, I'm quite often going, fucking hell, you've not got anything else to say about the because they are not used to talking in an engaging and compelling fashion over that distance of time. They're not. And I don't know whether that's a Kemi problem or whether it's a modern British political figure problem.
I think it's definitely like the absent. They've been taught to be absent of nuance, right? They want to be completely. They don't want to be open to interpretation. Everything has to have a direct line. Actually, I'll tell you who's very interesting in long form interview. Emily Thornberry. One of the only interviews I can point to where I thought she really fell down was that Newsnight interview that we were actually talking about yesterday with Pat Maguire and Gabriel Pogren that will be out later. Yeah, where she totally collapsed because it was like it was the least true she had ever been to her political career in that interview. But if you hear her in any other capacity, like when she was talking about at a time when we were in this rut of journalists asking politicians, does someone with a cervix, are they a woman? Do you remember when we were in that and she would be like, I will answer your question if you give me the space to answer it. I'm not giving you this yes or no answer that you're looking for. And she would then give you like this nuanced answer to it. That was when that's like her. Should we get her in for an hour?
Yeah, we should. Yeah,
I think
she'd be good. Yeah,
I wonder, or maybe I'd like to see the direction of travel for politicians in Britain doing media appearances is like an awareness of coming across as a good hang. Like you can't imagine any
good what
hang, like someone you want to hang out with for and listen to for an hour. You can't imagine any like frontline politician going on Have a Word and hanging out and having a laugh for an hour. But that's something I think you probably should be able to do.
Yes,
going forward.
I agree. For our generation, I think Nigel has that for older people.
Yes, I think so. If you read lunch with the FT,
Yeah,
she gets battered with the journalist.
Yeah, it's the pint thing. I'd love to have a pint with so and so. Like that is the equivalent of would you be able to mix it on a podcast for an hour or whatever, I guess.
Should we do another clip?
Yes, let's do another clip. Roll the clip.
Like, Prime Minister, I get it. Nobody wants to get into
Okay,
a trade war. But, unlike Peter Mandelson, sometimes you've got to stand up for what you believe in. My friends here in the DUP have learnt nothing from their mistake of backing Brexit and think that tariffs are a laughing matter. No. But would you agree with me that actually we need to stand up for ourselves, we need to back our workers, we need to back our businesses, not just in Lagan Valley, but indeed across the UK?
Yeah. What's the name of the guy from Futurama?
Bender.
No. The guy who looks like a crustacean.
Oh, Zoidberg.
Zoidberg.
Okay.
Sammy Wilson looking like Zoidberg.
He does.
in the background there with that moustache. Ed, you wanted to talk about this clip?
Right, okay. I'm going to air you all out.
No, come on. Tell me about this clip.
Okay, so the reason I wanted to talk about this clip
Yeah.
is I misunderstood it. I talked about that in the office. I thought she was making a joke about Epstein.
Right.
But she wasn't. And then no one else suggested a clip to talk about, so here we are.
We don't know if that. I've just asked actually someone who was in that clip. Do you know what she was talking about? Because I'm being genuine. I don't know what that Mandelson joke was. I naturally wanted to go ha ha, but I don't know what it was about.
I think it was probably about his comments about Trump being walked back.
Yeah, but you know what? The thing about a joke, Ed, is that
Oh, the bad joke. Yeah. No, hold it. Bad clip. Where were you two suggesting clips to talk about?
I said yes to Ed Davey. Where the hell is he?
Whoa, okay.
And-
This is getting a little bit personal.
And Ed Davey, is it?
Yeah. You're just looking around the camera at Laura, being like, where's Ed Davey?
I did not until I looked around here to look at the
Right,
notes.
okay, sure.
No, what my point was Ed Davey made a similar point on tariffs, but sans Mandelson, and Ed was just like, roll on the US ambassador. Give me Mandelson.
Okay, I've dropped the ball, but also it's a team sport.
I'd like to the question that you want us to discuss, right? Would he agree with me that actually we need to stand up for ourselves? We need to back our workers. We need to back our businesses, not just in Lagan Valley, but indeed across the UK. And Starmer, who was relatively surprised to be asked that question, sort of went, well, yes.
Yeah,
of course I agree.
Yeah.
And by the way, can you meet me in the tea room after and explain that Mandelson joke?
I don't know how angry I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
I wanted to laugh. I didn't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, sorry.
Also, it's so informal. Prime Minister, I get it.
Yeah,
Nobody
yeah,
wants to get into a trade war.
Well,
is that a union joke?
No, it's just the
Is
way
that
Alliance do things.
No, is that
just a bit different?
Is that a sausage alignment thing? It's not a withdrawal agreement thing.
No, I don't think so.
Because she's like, you remember they didn't want to get into a trade war?
I think Alliance are just, the cool third way of Northern Irish politics.
I get it, Prime Minister.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm so with you on the trade war thing.
We should get Saoirse on.
We should.
Yeah, okay.
To ask her about the joke.
Saoirse, what was that? I'm going to show you 3 pictures of Mandelson.
We just ask her for an interview. And can you clarify that joke, please? What were you talking about?
You've got 60 minutes to explain it, Saoirse.
Prove you're a good hang.
I think we're coming to the end of the record.
We cannot be coming to it. Is that all we've got for PMQs?
That's all we've got.
That's why I said no one else suggested a clip.
Sorry, just to be clear, our Prime Minister's questions coverage today was... Is Kemi Badenoch a good hang? And I don't understand this Mandelson joke.
And you guys wanted to start with Kanye.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah, it's what we do. Yeah, I think that's relatively on topic.
That is
way more.
We've been going for
half
half an hour. We've been going for half an hour as well, as what I would say.
Yeah, we might be going for half an hour. But
And the other thing I wanted to say is he's just started to chime in.
Fucking wrap
who
it up.
has?
Him.
I don't know. Actually, well, he didn't say anything about the Alliance
I thought it was
Party.
a good show.
Did you?
Yeah.
What about the Alliance Party? Do you think that Ollie is right to say that they're zany?
In some ways they are, but in many ways they're not.
Oh God, let me just invite like the most fair weather opinion on them. Yeah.
He sounds like the uncle in Derry Girls.
Oh, very good, Ed.
The
yeah.
one-
Irish people all sound the same to me.
No, boring people all sound the same to me.
Let me just change my reaction to that instead of agreeing with Ed. Yeah, Ed, what the?
Can you edit in point, out point this reaction?
It's taken 100 days, ladies and gentlemen, of the audience asking for a production team microphone.
One guy.
We agreed that we weren't going to draw attention to it.
Yeah.
and-
I know, but then he didn't say anything for the entire episode.
But then it's a nice treat for the guy at the
For me
end.
to say.
So why have we given you a microphone?
Because think how happy the boy's going to be who comments every day.
See, when Ava started off with her big, like, we hate the audience thing, actually, we do give. We give and we take, but we also give.
Mostly give. Take very little.
Yeah.
There was definitely more we could have done here.
But you need to put
Suggestions would have been welcome.
You need to put it in the running order.
Well, in my defence, I was organising, while watching PMQs, I was also organising the 2 interviews that we're doing after this.
Oh.
So I was negotiating with an
I'm
MP's
Ava,
office.
and I'm so busy.
I'm Ava and I was doing my fucking job. What do you mean?
Yeah.
All of you, there was 8 other eyes on PMQs.
Yes, I contributed.
Well, I actually wasn't including you in that. I was actually just lambasting the others.
Thank you.
What are you doing?
I can see through this small piece of paper.
Oh, time to go.
Should we talk quickly about Kanye?
Yeah.
Okay, so the reason that I wanted to talk about this was
You think Nazis are bad?
yesterday, hang on, let me just go back to the beginning. Kanye West used a Super Bowl advert to direct people to his website, his Yeezy website. And then on the Yeezy website, there was one product that was available. It was a white t-shirt with a large black swastika on it. Now, this website has now been taken offline, and Laura's clarified it was the Shopify platform. That makes so much sense, because I was like, who would take that down? But that makes sense. Last night I was at dinner, and I was listening to a Jewish colleague in the lobby, and sorry, he's not in the lobby, but anyway, I was chatting to him at dinner, and he was saying he was really disappointed in the lack of coverage about this swastika t-shirt, and he said everyone was talking about Elon Musk, and that was not a Nazi salute, and no one said anything about this t-shirt. And he said this is how it happens, right? This sort of authoritarianism creeps up, and before you know it, it's taken over. And I justified this by explaining we actually did talk about it at the desk, and it was a decision that we made not to publish it. It was a decision made because if you blurred out the swastika, then you direct people to the Yeezy website to potentially purchase it. If you don't blur it out and you just put it up there in cold, hard black and white, well, you've got a swastika on your page. And I didn't like either of those options. I was wondering what you guys thought about that.
Well, for me, I think Elon Musk doing a Nazi salute behind the presidential pulpit, and yesterday, for example, being stood in the Oval Office next to the Resolute desk with Trump sat behind it, talking about the swinging cuts he's making to the federal government. He has power. He has a lot of power, and he's possibly the most powerful man in the world. And when he does it, I think there are very direct and obvious consequences. Like, if you have that ideology and you can influence how the US government functions, that's dangerous. Kanye West doing it is also dangerous, but at the end of the day, he's an increasingly marginalized rapper who has a long history of doing insanely provocative things whenever he's about to release music or clothing or otherwise. And I don't think there's as much editorial justification. I'm happy to be proven wrong and argued with on this, but I don't think there's as much editorial justification for covering Kanye doing that as there is for Elon Musk doing it. That's my view.
There's also the angle of what can you illuminate beyond this thing you've already seen on social media has happened. And also, it's not the first time that Kanye West has come out in support of the Nazis. Like, if this was a clear break in anything that he'd said previously, then yeah, I think there is more justification to cover it. But it's the most egregious example of him supporting Hitler and supporting the Nazis.
I think that there's certainly a conversation about why on earth that Super Bowl commercial was allowed to run. Particularly in light of, I mean, it's not like he'd been tweeting all weekend some extraordinarily reprehensible things. And the last piece of merchandise that he was selling was a Puff Daddy t-shirt. So, you know, you can kind of draw from that maybe this isn't the most upstanding person who should be allowed to advertise.
But presumably he paid.
But I think the long and the short of it was that the formats with which we publish, it makes much more sense for us to talk about it on a podcast, but the formats in which we publish, it's extremely difficult to publish that story without putting a swastika on your page. And I would say that is that's just not something that I would want anywhere near our platforms.
Does it change how you feel about My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy?
Yeah. I think if your boyfriend is still saying he made Graduation, then time's up.
Can't separate the art from the artist?
This is the hardest one, but I'm not sure you can now.
Really? Wow.
I say in public.
I don't.
gotta wash my hands of Kanye. Right, back to the office.
I think it's. Did we talk about this on the podcast, or did we talk about it in the office where we were saying I thought that Azalea Banks made a really good point, which
we
was
did talk about it on the pod.
Oh, did we? Okay.
Yeah.
What was the point?
She's got a great boiled cat recipe.
Yeah, she does. She's boiled a cat once. But anyway, look, what we actually spoke about was. She pointed out to him that, like, the Hitler joke is so tired. You've done this so many times. If you are going to be anti-Semitic, be creative with it. Like, no, but it's true because it's actually just, it's such childish, like, it's just like really like
Route One
humor. Like, it's like, oh, the Nazis. Like,
it's like a schoolboy drawing a swastika in his mate's diary. Yeah. Sean, anything you want to say on that, mate?
No, I think you did a great job yourself, man.
Thanks, Sean.
Just Ollie.
This is going to be good.
And Ava.
Maybe we could get like a little GoPro back
and
there.
Ed.
Thank you. He'll
I'd
use
like
that
a fisheye lens camera on the gallery.
No, like a Francis Bourgeois.
Yeah, that would be great.
Oh, what, top down?
To face down.
Yeah.
That'd
be great.
I'd like that.
All right.
Shall we?
I think that's probably us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well,
guys.
Thank you everyone for listening.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Eva and Ollie.
We might have a couple more PMQs clips for you after recess. There'll be no PMQs next week.
Oh, fun.
Well, that's how we finish.
But
With Sorcerer Eastwood.
Right.
We went out on a high, fellas.
I think we've got a special guest for you though next week instead, haven't we?
Yeah. Yeah, we do.
Yeah, okay.
Is it Sorcerer Eastwood?
And then we've got.
No.
And if you'd actually like to hear some
Barry.
politics, there'll be an interview out later. Pat Maguire and Gabriel Pogren talking to Ollie and myself, Ollie and I, about their book Get In.
Nice.
Cool.
Well done, everybody.
Guys, great job.
Great work.
An honour to podcast with you both.
As per.
And Sean.
And Sean.
I'm not doing this long outro. Let's just cut it there, right?
Yeah.
That'll do.